interest in. And following up the questions which have been asked, I fully accept that you've taken the legal advice and you've done the right thing. And eventually all the information will come both to this committee and it will come also into the public domain because it will be published as part of your accounts, I'm sure. But what I'm interested in knowing is, was the amount which was agreed to be paid to Martin Whiteley and the amount which he was contractually entitled to, or was it a greater amount?
No,
and if it was a greater amount, why was it a greater amount?
As far as I'm aware, it's what he was contractually entitled to. As I said, that's the advice I'm giving.
I'll just ask a very quick supplementary question. I would encourage you to get the best possible officers you can to staff the combined authority. I just hope that the next one comes from Finland.
Look, I will,
So do I.
The next person to work for the combined authority will be chosen in the same way that all the others are chosen, is that whether they are good enough to do the job and whether they are capable of doing the job. There is absolutely nothing more than coincidence in where people live.
No. Well, with Paul Baines, I have to say I fully agree with that.
Yeah, well Paul is an exceptional candidate. His CV is of the highest possible standard. I personally thought it was very, very, very disappointing how the Labour group decided to go public with private opinions. Those opinions are printed in the press as factual, they were not factual. And I thought it was very disappointing in a combined authority that the Labour Party decided to try to make political capital out of an exceptional candidate. And there's an issue there with trust, and there's an issue with the way that the combined authority works. And it's, I would hope that we don't have that happen again.
Peter.
Apologies, Chair, for being late. So I've spent the first part of today with people involved with health and care issues because there's a review taking place to try and improve that. And at that meeting, James, there was considerable interest and indeed support for the work that's being done by the combined authority, by you, to try and develop an approach to government which could be termed a sort of second stage of devolution, which will be around health investment in this area. And so my sort of question is, what do we have to do, or what do you have to do, to move the narrative on to discussion about those sorts of important, groundbreaking issues, and move us on from the narrative that we currently have, which is these sorts of problems in the combined authority. And we can't lay it all at the feet of John Elworthy. So, I'd be interested in your reflections on how that shift in relationships can be achieved.
Well, I think first of all, Peter, that too much time is spent in politics reflecting on the now rather than the end game where we need to be. The most important thing for the combined authority is to deliver the people of Cambs and Peterborough. They are the people that I'm responsible to, and they are the people that elected me to the position that I'm in. You're absolutely right about the health devolution. We are working very hard on that. I have a meeting with the Secretary of State for Health on Friday. It won't be in East Cambs, by the way, if that excites anybody. But and the reality is it's about delivery. And these kind of things, it's an issue that's happened in the summer with the Chief Executive leaving. It has to be dealt with, but the most important thing is to focus on the end game. Always focus on the end game. And I'll let people enjoy batting things around politically if that's what they enjoy doing. But my job is to deliver for the command authority of people in Cambs and Peterborough, and I'm absolutely focused on doing so.
That's helpful, but are there any things that you think you could do to move, as I say, move this narrative on from these sort of bumps in the road? We have the letter from James Brokenshire urging everyone to work together. We've got this issue in others. I'm just
Well,
asking for a level of
Peter,
reflection.
that's politics, and politics is part and parcel of what we do, and we deal with the issues as they come along, and we get on with the job, and we deliver for the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We have a board paper coming this week with which will with the railway station and so on is in there. We've got Whittlesea Kingsdyke Crossing is in the next board paper. We've got, as you say, we've got issues going on around devolution of health. We've got the metro continuing, we're working continually on the metro system. So that these are all things that we're achieving, and as we move on, these things will come to fruition, and they will be built and developed, and the people of Cambridgeshire will benefit.
Absolutely right. Yes, it is.
Thank you. I've got Mike again, but Mike has already had a chance. So I'll come to Philip and I'll come back to Mike. But if other people want to speak before Mike, because there's already a chance to do this.
It's just one quick thing, I don't know whether you can say this now or if the information needs to be provided later, but we're talking about, you obviously want to focus on facts rather than speculation. So could you let us know how many officers are seconded or commissioned from the Cambs District Council to the Land Authority, and also, so that we can have some kind of comparison, how many from other constituent councils?
Yeah, I don't know the specs level, but we can get them to you. It's not a problem.
Okay, Mike.
James, I just want to come back to Peter's point, really, because in the spirit of being helpful, I think the reason why we're talking about the issues today, and you did so identify in the appointment of the chief executive, that you want to conduct a review. I think the concern is the revolving door in terms of staffing. Yeah. We are constantly meeting new people, and that's not helping, and I'm sure it takes them a while to pick up. It certainly takes us a while to understand who we need to be talking to. And at the moment, it doesn't feel as though the combined authority is at all settled, although it's been in existence now for some 18 months. So I would suggest when the review goes on, we need to address particularly the need for permanent staffing rather than a series of interims. And that will actually mean that we know who we're dealing with. They've got the continuity in terms of what the plans are, but at the moment, I think, picking up on Peter's point, you're not going to get past these sort of discussions, every overview and scrutiny committee perhaps, and every board meeting around staffing until you get settled with the staff. And I wondered what your view is on that and what plans you have to end up with a settled team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I agree with you. And we have now got a full-time director of business sitting beside me. We have Paul Rains as a full-time director, has started work in the last 2 weeks. We have Roger Thompson, housing, who's in place as well. And, you know, it's taken longer than I wanted it to get full-time people into these positions. However, I'm pleased with the people that we have working for the authority in those positions now. And we will continue to look for the best people who work for the authority in other permanent positions. And, you know, I would like to be sitting here now having directors in, full-time directors in place across the board. We're not in that position. But as I said, my focus is always on delivering for the general public. And that's the first thing and last thing that matters to me.
Yeah, good morning, James. Just following on from that, would you agree with me that we should be more concerned if we're sitting here in a year's time with the permanent appointments in, if we've still got the revolving doors? Because as you quite rightly say, the role of yourself and this authority is to deliver for the people of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And whilst I think these distractions in a minute are giving us quite a bit of entertainment here, they're not actually where we're working towards. So once the permanent people are in, if we start having revolving doors, I think we've got a problem. Having been involved in the business over the years, in a lot of areas, interim appointments always end up as that, and they tend to roll one into another until you get the permanent people. So I don't see it as a major disaster that interims are moving over. I would if it carried on afterwards, and I don't expect that it will. Thank you.
No, that's a good point. Thank you.
I don't seem to see any other hands, so we'll come to my questions. Oh, sorry, Ed. I'm sorry.
Mr. Barber, I was wondering if you would agree with me in thinking if we had a business plan or a programme delivery plan for this combined authority that had projects in it, that had programme fields in it, that said what was going to be done by whom, when, and what was going to be spent, would that overcome some of the problems we're having?
I don't think the issues we've had, Martin, even anything to do with the programme delivery plan. I think we've got a forward programme that's published.
We have a forward plan. For example, sorry for interrupting you, at the housing presentation at the last meeting, the director, Roger Thompson, explained how projects would come to him, and he'd sort of appraise them, but not independently. Whereas at the previous meeting, you said that projects had to come from constitute authorities via the board. It just doesn't seem to fit. I did ask a question why money was being spent after things had been built. Your interim chief of finance said she would get back to me. She hasn't.
Well, the interim chief of finance has left.
Did she resign?
I believe she moved on. I don't know.
The question is, would a programme, a delivery plan be helpful?
But we have a forward plan that's published on the website and updated on a regular basis.
Do you know the difference between a forward plan and a delivery plan?
I think that I clearly know what you're saying, Ed, and I think that it's obvious that the projects that we have in place are there for all to see, and we're working towards them.
Yeah. They don't take volumes, do they, to do? I think you're doing a grand job. With a forward planning and hopefully the delivery. Sorry.
Do you have a question?
No, I'm just backing him on what he says.
Okay.
Sorry, Ed.
Which one?
I was just thinking, like, can we have a programme of what the combined authority is going to do? I know things could change. You may want to have reserve projects. Why we're going to do it, and who's going to do it, and what it's going to cost. Because at the moment, we just seem to be spending all our money on admin and salaries. I mean, transport's very, very difficult. Housing is quite complex, but you must know in housing whether you want to provide social housing, you want to deal with an issue of can we actually deliver these projects and the geographic split. There's got to be some criteria for deciding. It seems to me it's a bit of a sweet shop, and the board dishes out money.
Well, I just don't see where that opinion is coming from at all. It just seems an incredible position to put yourself in. And, you know, what's very clear is the projects that we are running are very, very, very clear, and they're obvious to everybody. They're on our website, our forward plans. We're working towards every single one of those projects. Putting times, dates and costs ahead of delivery is not always the wisest thing to do. Making sure that our ambitions are strong and true, and we deliver on the projects that are in the combined authority deal, is exactly what we are doing.
Absolutely. Can you give some examples in Peterborough, for example?
Okay, well,
Mitchell Homes,
Peterborough
pieces.
Peterborough University is on target to the work to begin in 2019 on the Peterborough University site. That's on the site next to Bagman. That is part of the combined authority deal, and we are accelerating with that. So there is a clear example where the combined authority has put forward £14 million in Peterborough to deliver the university, and then we are on target and track to deliver the start of the building in 2019. But this is all in the papers of the combined authority.
This is what John Holditch said in the paper was going to be student union accommodation, but it's not. He was the portfolio holder of that.
I'm not going to get into details around what John Holditch did or didn't say, and I can't speak for John or not, but the reality is the plans are there for all to see, and the building begins in 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just finally, the housing plans for Peterborough. We're spending £3.5 million on homelessness. It's a great opportunity for the combined authority to help tackle that misery and reduce the cost, but it seems to be going.
I've been, and we have put money forward to several projects for housing in Peterborough, and we will continue to do so as the opportunities arise. But the reality is, what we want to do is make sure that the money that we have goes for additionality, not just for propping up housing associations. We've got clear projects and an ambition to deliver CLTs across the county that I can't believe that some of the other districts are not pushing as hard as they can, because CLTs deliver housing for working people, low paid people, at no cost to the taxpayer. and they absolutely work, and they're clearly delivering, and we should be concentrating on delivery of CLTs, because they are additionality, and they are a different way of doing things, and they don't cost the taxpayer, so that's absolutely the way to go.
Is it not clear that Peterborough are not interested in a community land trust?
Ed, I think
Well,
we're,
just because you're not interested.
I'm not
doesn't
saying,
say that
I'm not
Peterborough
saying
Ed,
I'm not.
I think we're coming off topic. We're getting into discussing Peterborough housing rather than the issues that the Mayor has come to discuss. I've got Mike and then Marcus and then Alan. And then Alan. So, Mike.
So following on from Ed's point, as I understand it, we've roughly got about 100 projects on the go, the combined authority. They certainly aren't listed in the forward plan. I was very concerned looking at the new forward plan. It doesn't even tell us what the plans are for developing the transport strategy. It's not listed all the way through to May and beyond of next year. Where would I go to see all the 100 projects listed and what stage they're at, what's going to happen next? I mean, I've been involved in development for 40 years, I suppose, altogether, and I would want to know where all these projects are at. I would expect you would want to know that as well, what the next stage is, what the costs, etc. are. To me, it's totally invisible. As an overview and scrutiny committee, we don't have visibility of this. So I think it's vital that we see more transparency on the work that's going on with the combined authority, and you should have a series of milestones with target dates, etc. for these, rather than, I mean, things like Cam Metro seem to have disappeared from our discussions. I don't know what stage it's at. We should be all knowing what stage the various projects are at.
Well, first of all, the committee's system, which should have come through earlier, but took a lot of political discussion, actually starts next month, and the committees will give you clear indication and work on the streams of work that you're suggesting, and I think that will make a massive difference. First of all, I think it will bring more open democracy into the combined authority, which is welcome, and I believe it will give transparency in the areas that you were asking for. So I'm looking forward to those starting. And you know, there are situations where discussions have to be had on certain projects in early stages that are not for public consumption. That's obvious to everybody. We can't discuss every single issue that we're trying to do in public. We have to make sure that we protect not only our partners, but also we protect the public and the opportunities for the future. So there are things that are going on around the metro, for example, that I can't wait to publish that work, and we will make sure that everybody is fully aware of it. But at times, there have to be discussions in private, and that's prevalent.
Yeah, I understand that, Jake, but if we've got 100 projects, I would expect to know what stage they're at. So it might be at the business case stage, for instance. It might be at the financing stage. It might be at the design stage. If we've got 100 projects going on, then surely you and we should have visibility of those. And I look forward to the committees managing that through, because that's what you seem to be indicating. It's part of their brief, as I understand it, is a monitoring brief. In fact, it's their main role, isn't it? So will that come from the programme office? I mean, do they actually have that detail at this stage or not? Because we were hoping to have Roberts here today, but that unfortunately isn't happening.
But I mean, I can't answer every question you've got in detail, Mike. And but certainly, you know, the committee system will bring through what you're suggesting. I'm confident in the committee system delivering, so that you know exactly where you are with the public. And I'm confident that system will work much better than the portfolio system that certainly didn't work.
Marcus and
I had a question about Paul Rains's role, because you've appointed him as Director of Strategy. It used to be called Strategy and Planning. Has the portfolio changed? Is there a process for portfolio changes after someone has been appointed to a role?
Well, it's a process. My portfolio changes as someone's put into a role, but as you say, as you're aware, we are undergoing a review of the Combined Authority, and the roles of the directors may be slightly moved to make sure that they're best suited to the role, or to make sure that the role is best suited for them, or that we can make sure that we get the best performance of the Combined Authority through those roles. So, you know, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on position and names of jobs, etc. I really don't put a lot of emphasis on that. I put emphasis on getting delivery.
So who's going to be responsible for spatial planning now? Still that same person?
Well, the spatial, so part of Paul's role is currently spatial planning. Whether Paul ends up in charge of spatial planning, or whether another director is brought in who has part of that brief, then we will see from the review. That's why we're having the review months.
And the new legal counsel, the new monitoring officer, will also be the legal counsel to the authority.
I believe so.
And that has gone through the employment committee.
No, because it's an interim appointment, because Kim is...
It's because it's a board appointment, it's reserved in the constitution to the board appointment, so it doesn't go through the employment committee, it goes directly to the board.
Okay, and the board will ensure that he's duly legal qualified and all that. Okay.
Thank you, Lizzie. Apologies for being late. I was car park called the A14, we didn't move for 45 minutes. But anyway.
That's right, I was there too.
Yes, crash just west of Stoke and Quiet. Just a quick point. Obviously we're in a unique scenario in that we've gone from the start-up in May last year, so I'd echo what David was saying. It's going to be very difficult to get running. But my point specifically is touched on the projects. At the last overview and scrutiny committee, when Rachel was here, the previous interim chief financial officer, she said in the fourth year of the medium-term financial plan, there's all of the funding basically, which makes it very difficult to review that. And I know that she was looking at whether we would get information showing the later years that were going to be past the 4 years. Obviously, I think it was going to come to the September board. Obviously, with maybe the changes, that's not happened. But I think that would be, from our point of view, would be very useful to see that information.
Yeah, so we've deferred that from month to October. So we'll come to the October board, and there will be a medium-term financial plan. And as was requested at the May board, that will now be split between revenue and capital. And to pick up Mike's point, that will also break down a project stack for the capital with projections going forward.
Okay, that we look forward to seeing that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things to follow up, just to try and pick up some of the points that I was going to make. The first one was to go back to the original questions around the resignation of the chief executive. You've told us that he resigned. It is unusual for somebody to resign and then immediately leave their post. You're absolutely right in your responses to Marcus's questions that an employee has every right to resign, and they frequently do, but it's normal for them to work out their period of notice rather than leaving immediately. So can you just reassure the committee that he was not asked to resign?
Martin, I've gone through this.
Yeah, I just want to
so yeah, I can reassure Martin offers his resignation, and I don't repeat.
And he wasn't asked to. He resigned entirely of his own volition.
He resigned. Yeah.
Can you just say?
Well,
in answer to my question, he was not
to be honest with you, Lucy, I've been asked this by Marcus, I've been asked it by Mike, and I've asked it by you, and the clear answer is that the chief executive resigned. I don't know how I can expand on the chief executive resigned, but the chief executive resigned.
But my question is slightly different from that asked by Mike or by Marcus. Did you ask for the chief executive's resignation?
The chief executive resigned. I don't think there's anything more I can say than the chief executive resigned.
You could say no, but then you have not said no, so we will move on. The second question that I had, you talked about the appointments to the board. The appointments of the interim chief executives, and you talked about those having been discussed with the informally with the board, and you talked about there being a democratic vote. Presumably that means that the agreement of those positions was not unanimous.
Well, we live in a democratic society, Lucy, and sometimes votes are unanimous and sometimes they're not.
Thank you, that's very helpful, that's also clarified. So to come on to the Chief Financial Officer and the appointment of the Chief Financial Officer, I was just wondering, you've explained very clearly, and I understand that there is a different process for appointing an interim from appointing a permanent member of staff, and that an interim appointment doesn't go through the employment committee. So I was just wondering, given that we'd had an interim chief financial officer whose contract was presumably coming to an end, and you can see why that contract was coming to an end, what was the reason for appointing a second interim?
Well, my preference would be permanent members of staff. Clearly, we needed to replace Rachel, and there was an immediate need to get somebody in. I assume that's why the Chief Executive went down the interim role. I think we're 4 finance directors in now, and that's not something that I'm very pleased with. I want a permanent director of finance in the same way that I want permanent directors across the board. So we're delighted that Carl has come in. He's hit the ground running. It's not been an easy task for him, but he has, and he clearly has got a control of his brief. That's very, very positive. But we will certainly be looking to bring forward a permanent Section 151 officer for the Command Authority.
So I don't think that's quite answered the question.
Well, the reality, Lucy,
can I just
my job is very
advertise?
I'm not head of pay services of the Command Authority. The head of pay services of the Command Authority at the time was the Chief Exec. His job is to bring forward the people that we need for the Command Authority. For whatever reason, and I can't answer for him, he's decided that an interim would be the thing to replace Rachel. I don't know the reasons behind that.
So you haven't advertised for a permanent appointment?
Sorry.
Might I try and help just briefly?
Thank you.
So I did cover this in my paper on the appointment of the Director of Strategy and Planning, just in touching. And if you read through that, you will see that there was a process to appoint all 4 directors. So Strategy and Planning, Business and Skills, the CFO and Infrastructure. And there was a very strong candidate for the CFO position on a permanent basis who pulled out after the assessment was made.
Thank you.
So that process actually fell over at late notice. As you suggest, Rachel Musson, my predecessor, had already committed to leave. In fact, she's gone on a round-the-world trip with her family for a year. So there were rather set dates with that. So there was quite a quick then process to re-establish that on an interim basis.
That's extremely helpful and answers the question entirely. So thank you very much indeed. That's wonderful. My next question, and it may be that the answer that Carl's just given partly answers my next question. So at our last meeting, we had Rachel, and she told us that there was a medium-term financial plan in process. This brings us back to the points that were being made in the earlier questions about the forward plan and about the kind of the changes in staffing, making it difficult to scrutinise the forward plan because things keep changing. So at our last meeting, we were told that at this meeting we would have the medium-term financial plan available for us to look at. There doesn't seem to be a medium-term financial plan. We have nothing. Is that as a result of the staffing changes that have happened over the summer, or is there another reason why the medium-term financial plan?
Well, I think Carl has already answered that, but
I can take it a step further. So I've come in. I do not have a background in local government. So the split between revenue and capital is something that I've dealt with elsewhere, but not in great depth. And so I needed to be absolutely clear as to capitalisation policy and the treatment of such, particularly given the 5-year Green Book review that the Combined Authority will have and how that assessment will take place, and a view as to continuity of funding through that period. So I've been taking soundings through our auditors and other advisors to establish exactly what that should be and establish the split between capital and revenue, which is very important as we undertake a number of feasibility studies.
Excellent.
So I need to get through that detail and through the detail of that project stack to come back to you with a clear answer.
And do you think you'll be able to do that by our next meeting in
I'm
October?
scheduled to do that for October, and I anticipate doing that for October.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I've got one more question, which is that prior to this meeting, because we were discussing staffing, I asked the scrutiny officer whether it would be possible for the committee to have a structure chart for the various directors and what they were responsible for, so that we could ask relevant questions and be well informed. And I was told that there wasn't a structure chart for the organisation, which I find slightly surprising. Would it be, I mean, is that something that is because of changes over the summer? Was there one previously? And will one be available relatively soon? Because it's quite difficult for us to scrutinise the organisation if we don't know what people are responsible for.
Yeah. So, as you're aware, there was a structure that was put forward the Combined Authority Board earlier this year, with obviously the staffing structure coming over to the Combined Authority. But part of the review is to look at the structure and restructure if necessary for a single organisation rather than sort of two an amalgamated organisation. So I'd be very, very happy to let you have, I'm sure that you can have the structure that was passed through the Combined Authority Board earlier this year, and that's pretty easy to get hold of. But there is a review going on, Lucy, as you're aware, and that review will bring forward a new structure for the Combined Authority.
When are you expecting that review to have completed its work?
Well, we've got our role as interim chief executive, so we will take the time needed during our interim period, which is set to be 6 months. So it will come forward hopefully before the end of the 6 months, but by the end of the 6 months is when it's expected. Lucy, can I say that the Councillor Metzinger and Chair, that we have in fact drafted a letter already to go out to all chairs of the committees, including this committee and the audit committee, explaining the interim arrangements, and that's subject to the board making its approval on Wednesday. To those interim arrangements, we will then write to all of the chairs and let them know what the proposed interim structure is and who you can contact if you need to find details out about what's going on within the Combined Authority.
So that letter, which will, I imagine, come to me and I can then share, will that also include, presumably that will explain your role and John Hill's role. It will also explain which director is covering which areas.
Yes, it will.
I think that's extremely helpful. Thank you. I think that completes my questions. Does anybody else? We've probably got about 1 more minute. but I think probably I can't see any other burning questions. So thank you very much for taking us. It's extremely helpful, and thank you for coming as relatively short.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.